funny cause the rappers are posing as the gangsters while the government taking money as bonuses for bankers. In life you learn to close your eyes and hold your tongue, but together we will overcome. There's never been a chosen one.
Okay, so day 10 just wrapped up. It was a short day today. They finished about 3 hours earlier than they usually do, which was kind of nice for being a Friday. It's been a long week. So today their first witness that they brought onto the stand was Mark Archibald. So he worked with Craig at Lassiter's, and he described working with Craig on firewall, router, and IT security stuff. He said that he saw the server room. He said that they were working on trying to block online gambling on behalf of the Australian government. They tried to do the same thing with this witness as they had with all the others, trying to get them to admit or make statements to Craig not being kind of special in any way, kind of just undercutting him or downplaying him in some way. They didn't cross-examine him for very long. It was a very short cross-examination. But they discussed how he and Craig had talked about digital currency years before Bitcoin. So I think they were talking about in 2004, discussing digital currencies with one another. And yeah, not a whole lot came out of that. It seemed like they were just trying to get him to make statements that would bring Craig down a notch, let's just say that, and it didn't really work. Next up was Danielle De Morgan. So it's Craig's sister. She described Craig as someone who they thought from a very young age would be someone who would create something that would change the world, and it seemed like Craig had an obsession with Japanese culture from a young age that everyone kind of took note of, that he had Japanese weapons, like authentic Japanese weapons that he practiced with. And she described an incident where her and her friends were out near their home and saw a guy with I think a samurai sword or some sort of ninja weapon at the park. And lo and behold, it was Craig. When Craig came home, she discovered it was him. So when she heard the Satoshi Nakamoto pseudonym, she immediately thought of Craig. Just kind of a bunch of supporting statements like that. It doesn't carry a whole lot of weight, I guess, because it's his sister, but I mean, it's all just kind of piecing together the argument that Craig's side is trying to make. The third witness for the day, it was a copyright lawyer who gets some work from N-Chain and from Craig. So this is Marianne Elizabeth Jones, and it seemed like COPA's lawyers were trying to make the case that Craig didn't necessarily author a lot of the patents that he's listed as the patent holder of. And she kind of wasn't agreeing with that either. They were kind of trying to put words in all of the witnesses' mouths, and none of them really allowed it. They wanted to know how many patents that Craig was the primary inventor on, and or the sole primary inventor listed on the patent. Apparently, they said there was only 6. But I mean, there are thousands of patents where he's listed as the holder, so I think at one point even the judge interjected because he was trying to talk about one specific patent and spending a lot of time on it. I think it was number 42, something that's listed in evidence is number 42, I believe. And I think it's the one that she said was particularly relevant pertaining to why she thinks he's Satoshi. He also tried to get her to make comments about some patents she wasn't familiar with, and she wasn't kind of playing that either, trying to make insinuations about why certain things may have been done, and she didn't really do that. They spent a lot of time trying to tie her to N-Chain, and they questioned her a lot about her relationship with N-Chain, how she'd gone to certain what they called marketing events. They were maybe just conferences where blockchain was discussed and their patent holdings may have been discussed. mean, yeah, it's kind of a marketing event, I guess, but really this woman was not a direct employee of Enchain, not an internal employee of Enchain anyway, but they're really trying to paint her as one. They spent a really long time questioning her and trying to make the argument that she either was an internal employee or was like a de facto internal employee where she had like the privileges of an internal employee essentially, but she was saying she never had access to any of the computer systems or anything like that. They asked her if she was aware of other people who were candidates for being Satoshi Nakamoto, and listed Hal Finney and some other people who was just it's kind of laughable to think of certain people. I know a lot of people suspect these guys, but when you dive into their stories, like their wives don't back it up, like there's a lot of things. It's just not, I mean, it doesn't point in their direction. But in spite of that, COPA mentioned it several times, which I thought was weird. But really, it was a short day. Not a whole lot came out that was interesting. It was just more of what you'd expect from these sort of witnesses, them just making statements about Craig being elite at what he did, and that they all suspect he's Satoshi. But just taking stock of the last 2 weeks now, it's been 10 days. I mean, if the trial were to end right now, it wouldn't go to Craig. I don't think so anyway. He hasn't made enough evidence. He doesn't have enough evidence on his side at this moment to win the case. I think that may or may not change when the Madden report gets really torn apart by Craig's side. He has to discredit some arguments from the Madden report in order to get some of his key documents free from suspicion, essentially. Like, he has to clean his documents in the eyes of the judge to the point that the judge can use those in his verdict in Craig's favor. If he can't do that, he probably won't win at this point unless there's some sort of bombshell. It does really seem like Craig's team is way too relaxed. Like, there have been very few instances where Craig's lawyers have interjected into the proceedings at all. They haven't really done much at all. Like, they've really only, I think there's been 4 times where they've objected in the court in the last 10 days. And a couple of them were repetitive, where they were just saying that this is a waste of time. So it wasn't even something that was really like pertinent to the arguments being made. They're just being like, come on, speed it up. Like, that's what they're using their interjections into the court time for. To ask to speed things along because the questioning is irrelevant. That's really what's been going on for the last few weeks. And it seems like they're much too relaxed. I feel like there is something that they're sitting on. I don't know what that something might be. I know a lot of people are still talking about a potential watermark. I don't think that would be the case. But I feel like there's definitely some sort of strategy on Craig's side that is giving them a lot of confidence that you wouldn't expect them to have at this stage. At this stage, I feel like if you're just watching the court and like I said, I think if the judge had to make up his mind this weekend, I don't think he would rule in Craig's favor. I think he might be leaning towards that, but he doesn't have the evidence he needs to make that ruling at this point. So it's I still need to see what happens when Madden gets cross-examined by Craig's side, and whether or not they can get the Madden report thrown out, or just key points from the Madden report thrown out so that some of their documents can be considered by the judge. So yeah, I think Craig's side's been doing a great job so far. There haven't been any real knockout blows to Craig. He's gotten beat up a couple times throughout the last 2 weeks, but really I think he did a great job on the stand. I think he made a really, really convincing case for himself on the stand. These last few days, the witnesses are adding credibility to his story. But there has to be something more concrete to this. I feel like there's so much at stake here that the judge is going to demand something more solid, and it has to be either from documents that are brought out of question, so clearing them from clearing them from the Madden report. If you can discredit the Madden report enough, or discredit Madden enough, so that those documents that have been claimed are forgeries aren't seen in the eyes of the court as suspected forgeries any longer, then I think Craig will win. But he has to do that, so we'll see. Or do something, pull a rabbit out of his hat. Like, I don't even know what that would be. There's a lot of people coming up with imaginative ideas as to what that might be. It's easy to speculate, and it's fun to speculate, but I have no idea. We'll have to just wait and see. And the same thing could be true of COPA's lawyers, or the COPA side. They might have an ace up their sleeve that they're waiting to play as well. So we're only 2 weeks down. There's 4 weeks to go. We've still got another month of court, and yeah, it's like we're a third of the way now. So sometime in the next 2 weeks, I'll put out a really good video, a longer length, a more high production video, and I'll discuss what I think a little more.